Very special guest on Poets Have Something to Say here today. We have Melinda Palacio. She is the Santa Barbara, California Poet Laureate, and we usually interview people around Wisconsin, but once in a while we like to travel beyond our borders and find some new, really interesting poets. And for gosh sake, there's a lot of great poets out there. Melinda, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for allowing the time.
Oh, thank you.
Well, tell us. We're going to get to a poem here in just a second of yours, which I start every interview with you reading poetry. But just briefly, how long have you been the poet laureate in Santa Barbara?
Just over a year. It's a 2-year term, and so this past April started my second year. So I have until April of 2025.
That's awesome. That almost perfectly coincides with when I was named poet laureate in North Fond du Lac in March of 23. So we're just
Yes,
we're just a
yes.
month apart. Yeah. So we're going to get into that a little bit more about how exciting that is, and I know from
Yeah,
personal
we're in the
experience.
same laureate class.
I guess so. But your city is a lot bigger than mine. My village is about 5,000. So Santa Barbara is about 85,000 people. That's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's a big little town. It's a big little
That's
beach
cool.
town.
That's cool. Well, let's and again, welcome to the program. If you just tuned in, it's Poets Have Something to Say. It's our August show. Um, can you read one of your poems for us to start us off?
Yes, I'm going to read the poem that I wrote for my inaugural poet laureate poem. This is so you'll get a sense of what Santa Barbara is like. Um,
Sounds good.
Santa Barbara is a poem. One winter she shows off like a child playing dress up in a white cape. From the ocean, admire her gentle, powdered peaks, a rare dusting. Rejoice as water droplets turn to hail, to snow, a rarity in Aztlan, Shumash land impossible to reach when mud or fire threatens. Evergreen pear blossoms fall like feathers, peaceful and soft. A slight breeze on a jacaranda and it rains purple. Add leaves, golden hands, sometimes bright bread, and it's a fiesta, nature's party. Coast live oaks grow twisted, rooted like guardian angels. In the wind, king palms sway, drop fruit from a canopy of prickly crowns. A blessing, shrouds of gray clouds hide the sky, and I put hands in the earth, pull weeds and prune roses. Stay still as a Rufus hummingbird motors past my ear. Walk at dusk and the moon rises over Sycamore Canyon. Wait for the twinkling. Greet the archer and the seven sisters.
That's beautiful.
There's still more.
Okay.
Santa Barbara, eres una poema. Speaking Spanish in Santa Barbara means home, negates every time someone has told me to go back where I came from. I was born in this golden state, 100 miles south of this paradise. Santa Barbara, you are a poem. It's easy to want it all in this idyllic land. In my neighborhood known as San Roque, fruit rolls down, limes, orange, persimmons, avocados, course around a cul-de-sac named Lucinda. When I meet her, the woman named after the street, she offers me flowers. My neighbor calls to her young daughter, tells her to bring a sprig of provide an Eden for all, housing, mental services, jobs for all who flock to this land we call home. Santa Barbara is a poem. And that's the end.
That's gorgeous. And I read up on you a little bit before the interview, and one of the descriptions says that Palacio's poetry captures the vibrantly painted desert culture, revealing both fragile beauty and uncompromised harshness. I loved how that was described. But in that, what you just read there described in that way the beautifully vibrant atmosphere, culture. So thank you for sharing that. That was great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, the reason that one quote about desert culture, it refers to a novel that I wrote titled Ocotillo Dreams, and it's a novel it's about immigration, and it's set in Arizona during the 1997 immigration sweep. So that's what that was referring to.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that. Well, that's great. So you write novels. How many novels have you written?
I've only written one, but I'm working on another one.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do write in a variety of genres. I have a poetry connection column that I write twice a month for the Santa Barbara Independent.
Is that cool or what? That's great. So maybe we could share the link once we put the program up here. We maybe can share the link if you wanted to send that later to me. That would be great.
Yeah.
So people can go there.
That's where I talk about things that I'm doing as poet laureate, or I talk about poets that have come into town or that I've interacted with. I originally had thought about doing a podcast.
There we go.
As part of my laureateship, but I just thought, that I didn't have all of the right equipment. It just seemed like you needed equipment, and I also didn't. I was about to invest in all of that, but then the column fell into my lap. The editor asked if I wanted to write the column, and it just was at the right time, just before I started as poet laureate. So I went with that, having had some experience as a journalist.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about your. So you have had some journalism experience. Tell us about that a bit.
Well, I at some point when I was living in Arizona, I applied for a job at the Scottsdale Tribune, as a freelance writer, and my first story was to write about Krispy Kreme donuts, and then the Girl Scouts. So pretty soon my beat was lifestyle stories. And when I moved to Santa Barbara, I started writing for the Goleta Valley Voice and writing similar types of stories. It was a small paper, and in 1 week I wrote 4 different pieces.
Wow.
And at some not too far into living in Santa Barbara, I started publishing poetry. It's a town where maybe you can tell from the poem that it's very inspiring, and there are a lot of artists. And when I moved to Santa Barbara in 2000, there were so many poets, and it was just a place for poetry. And I took a lot of poetry workshops and became just immersed in the poetry scene there.
That's great. It's funny how one thing leads to another, right? You had your journalism experience, and that led to something else, which leads to something else. Isn't that the way life goes sometimes, right?
Yes. And I did. I did think that I would solely focus on literature. I have a degree in comparative literature from Berkeley and
wow, cool.
a master's in literature from UC Santa Cruz. But at some point, I decided that instead of breaking down the literature and critiquing literature, that I really wanted to write the literature, that I wanted to add my voice. And so that was an earlier path to poetry and literature.
Excellent.
And in addition to the earlier influences I had as a child and being the daughter of a teacher.
That's interesting too. Being a daughter of a teacher, how did that shape your early interest in writing and creative expression? Did that spur you on somehow?
I think it did, although I didn't really wasn't aware of it, because my mom taught. She taught kids from kindergarten to high school, and she was a single mom, and she started as a teacher's aide, and she would take me. She would take me to her classes because she was studying at the California State University and at East LA College, and she was studying art history, and she would take me with her. And so I grew up in a university, so it was. I think all of that has certainly contributed to who I am now, and the different experiences. Also, growing up with my grandmother and always having music in the house. She always having the radio on, always having a song in there, and so.
Yeah, sounds like just a perfect atmosphere for growth of a creative person. If you just joined us, we're with Melinda Palacio, and this is our August edition of Poets Have Something to Say. Of course, a comment's always welcome on the Facebook page. If you have a comment or a question, feel free to do that. Tell us a bit about how you are spreading the word, so to speak, in Santa Barbara. How do you engage the local community? You've been there as the Poet Laureate for about a year now, or a little bit more. How do you engage the local community through poetry? What projects are you working on, or have you done workshops? Just tell us a little capsule, a little summary of what you've done so far.
Okay. Well, I really enjoy bringing poetry to different kinds of spaces. So in addition to to some workshops that I've given at the library. I also have joined the library on the go van. They have a van that goes to different places like parks.
Cool.
And so I've joined the library on the go van and have done some readings at Shoreline Park and a brewery also.
A brewery. Now, why would a brewery have poetry in a brewery? That doesn't quite seem to match up. But how does that?
Oh, that one, that one was one of the less successful events.
Okay. You don't have to say anymore. Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of chaotic. They even had a little bouncy house, so there was kids, bouncing around.
Oh man.
It was yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I've also done programs for the senior citizens. My neighbor, Electra, she told me, she said, "Oh, there's a free day at the Botanic Garden, and you could read poetry there." And so I said, "Oh, okay." And I approached them, and they liked the idea. So I set up under an umbrella and read for the free senior day.
Cool.
And I've also done readings at homes, living for seniors, and Zoom readings at UC Davis. Far out of my county. My area is Santa Barbara County, which is from Ventura to Santa Maria, or Santa Barbara or Carpinteria to Santa Maria, and includes Lompoc. I've been to the Lompoc Library to give a reading. I did this show. I have had some wonderful collaborations, including bringing together 7 poets on typewriters on State Street, and we would type poems on demand.
Oh wow, that's fun.
Thursdays.
That's a lot of fun. I bet that was a blast, huh?
Yes, it was so successful. I've done that twice, and it's a wonderful way to get to meet people in your town that you didn't know about, or visitors. I've also have given some workshops and readings at the art museum, the Santa Barbara Art Museum. One of my favorite events is they had a Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead celebration, and I have a series of poems on La Llorona that I like to read for the Day of the Dead, and also reading poems that honor my ancestors. And let's see, what else?
You're involved in a tremendous amount of. I'm just super impressed with all the variety that you're involved with on many levels.
Thank you. In my first month, I satisfied all of the requirements for both years laureateship. So if I wanted to, I could just kind of coast.
And here I thought I was an overachiever, Basically, I think I made all the bullet points in about 8 months. But man, you are. I'm just amazed by all the stuff you've done. Can maybe I missed it, but how is it? How does this Santa Barbara Poet Laureate picked? How was it picked?
You're nominated. People in the community nominate,
Right.
and this or when the year that I was nominated, they had a new interview process. So there was a separate. Once they had a few candidates, we were all interviewed. So we gave an interview and we did a reading.
Wow.
And yeah, it's kind of a serious competition. I didn't realize. And yeah, so I was chosen.
That's cool.
I read a poem from. I think I read a poem from the Fire book, from my book, my first book, How Fire is a Story Waiting. Yeah, I read some of those.
How many poetry books do you have?
I have 2 books and a chapbook. My chapbook Folsom Lockdown won Kalupi Press Sense of Place Award, and that was the first booklet. That was a little chapbook that was published, and those are poems that I wrote after visiting my father in Folsom Prison.
Oh wow, that's intense.
And he is out now.
That's good.
But we've always been estranged.
Wow.
Would you like to hear that poem?
Yes. Hang on to that because I want to finish the show with that poem, and I always finish with one of my favorite poems or one of my own after that. So we're gonna save. We're gonna save. Actually, I wrote a poem this morning that I'm going to share, and leading into that, well, this would be a perfect segue. I wanted to talk to you about the creative process. I know when I wrote my poem this morning, it's called "The Light." I woke up about 6 in the morning and I had these 2 lines in my head. The first 2 lines were there, and I was thinking, this is a beautiful start. And then I end up just filling lines in after the first 2 lines. That's how I wrote mine at 6 in the morning. Does your creative process? I would imagine everybody's creative process differs. What is when you sit down? Do you sit down and write a poem, or does it just come to you?
It depends on, as a poet laureate, sometimes you're asked to write poems about certain things.
Yep.
And lately I've been commissioned to do poems in response to artwork. And those kind of, when the deadline comes around, the other thing I wanted to mention is that I collaborated with Lee Williams to bring poetry on our municipal buses.
Oh, wow.
So when that deadline came, and I was the last poet that that needed to turn in her poem for the buses, and I wrote that right away. I just so as a journalist, when I'm having deadlines, sometimes I tend to do things. I wait for. I kind of let the idea simmer in my mind, but then there comes that final point where it has to be done, so I need to sit down and do it. I rarely do anything at 6 a.m. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do know that feeling of having a good line to start with. I have a project where I started to write companion songs to my poems. As, during the pandemic, I got really into playing guitar and ukulele.
Wow.
And I started to hear melodies for some of the poems, and then the melody kind of took precedence of the words changed, and the song became its own piece.
Wow, that is super interesting. Well, we have yet another thing in common. I also play guitar. I'm what I call a confident beginner, but I have a YouTube channel. It's called the Poet Laureate channel. What a wild name for that, huh? And I love. Sometimes the writing comes first, and sometimes the music goes along with the writing. Sometimes the melody comes first. So for me, there's a variety of different ways that songs come to me. But lately, I've been doing a project with Frank Watkinson, who is from England. He's a very popular YouTube person. He's got about 1 million followers, and I was lucky enough to get him on the podcast about a year ago, and he liked my poetry. So he has written about 12 songs now based on my poetry. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, where it leads you. So it can lead you in a bunch of different directions, but that's neat. How long have you been playing guitar and ukulele?
I could say at least 6 years.
Wow, cool. So you're more than a confident beginner, I would imagine.
Yes, although I think I'm, what's kind of made me go a little beyond the beginner level was performing the songs for people.
Oh, good.
And I've done some performances at UCSB, and at whenever I think it's an appropriate audience, I'll bring the guitar or I'll bring the ukulele. And
awesome.
So it's been nice having this position and being able to debut some of the songs and see how it goes with having an audience. When we the last typewriter on demand that we did, I played a few songs. So it's been a lot of fun being able to tap into that type of creativity.
That's so wonderful. We have just a few minutes left, and I want you to share that. It sounds like a really great poem that you're going to share with us here in a few moments. Again, our guest is Melinda Palacio. We are just blessed to have her on the show. And just a few minutes left. I'm going to read one of my poems that I wrote this morning, but first, Melinda, take it away.
Thank you. Dancing with Sorrow's Ghost. My father is in prison. He is dancing with Sorrow's ghost and all the unwanted Don Juans and Romeos of the world. He wears an imaginary Panama hat to match his infectious Panamanian smile. He stands tall in front of his bare bunk bed, wears his country like a gold cross, and yells, "I'm from Panama." His voice booms beyond iron bars. "I'm from Panama. I don't belong here." Being an exotic man from Panama reduced his sentence to 9 years in Folsom Prison for a crime of passion and stupidity. Too late to trump the law with angelic eyes lies and Panamanian pride, locked up for being crazy and off his meds, wielding a sword like Zorro, drawing a gun like Zapata under a wide sombrero. His final card not good enough to keep him home on parole. How do I talk to the charismatic lunatic, my father? The criminal with psycho gene and tangled gypsy beard. Like Don Quixote, my father fights windmills in the night. Tricky, kinky-haired Tony slipped a piece of metal into his sock to protect his coffee bean-colored skin. The blow like a shooting star, he'll never know his own strength. With his enemy tucked away for the purple night, my father wrote poetry. His farewell letter to his daughter, a fable about a turtle and a hare. Secluded in a darker place for his sock trick, 6 months in the hole, nestled like the man in the iron mask, dreaming of sunshine, sleep, baba, sleep.
It is fantastic. And I can see the bond between you and your father. It's very apparent there. Beautiful stuff. Before we go, I want to share my poem that I wrote this morning called The Light. The Light. I've got my dark sides, and you've got them too. Let's look at them in the light and see what they do. Let's laugh in the sunshine and smile in the shade and see what kind of world we've made. Let's see what kind of world we've made. Dark spirits fall when we look at it all. We see the grace of time and love sublime. But make no mistake, when you look at it all, it's one day at a time before the big fall. So let's dance together and touch each other's souls and gaze at the tremulous beauty to behold. All bets are on you tonight, to turn around and see the light, to turn around and see the light. That's the light. When I had those first 2 lines, I had to go with it.
Oh, that's wonderful, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me share that. And thank you for sharing your wonderful poetry, your creative ideas. We talked about your creative process. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, do you have a Facebook page or do you have a website?
I do. I have both. I have a Facebook page. I have a website. I have Instagram at Poet Palacio. And all the website is melindapalacio.com, and I think you would recognize my Facebook page under Melinda Palacio. You'll see a lot of poetry stuff, and sometimes I include links to the Poetry Connection column at the Santa Barbara Independent.
Perfect.
In case there's other other Melinda Palacios, but.
That's awesome. And please share that link so when we go live with the show, I can share those links with our audience. And again, I very much appreciated having you be part of Poets Have Something to Say. We've been doing the podcast for about a year and a half now. We've had great response, and it's great to be able to, like I said, highlight a lot of folks in Wisconsin and the Midwest, but it's great to go outside our comfort zone here and interview some folks.
You.
Thank you for being part of the show, Melinda, and continued good luck. We might have to get an update in a year or so, see how you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to meet you too sometime. The only other Wisconsin poet I know is Richard Vargas. He's in Wisconsin.
I've heard the name. Was he? Where is he from?
I'm not sure. He's originally from Los Angeles, but
Okay.
he moved to Wisconsin.
That's awesome. I'll have to look him up.
I could look it up real quick.
That's okay. Well, if you're interested, we'll we will supply when the program goes live. We will definitely supply with websites and links to Melinda's work. And I'm just I'm fired up because you're a musician, and I love how you're pairing music with your poetry. I think that's so beautiful. Well, thanks for being our guest today on Poets Have Something to Say. I hope you have a wonderful night and a great weekend.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Richard lives in Monona.
Okay.
Yeah, you should have him on.
I will. That's great. I love new ideas, and there's a Facebook site called Wisconsin Authors, and I mentioned last night. I said I have a poetry podcast, and I've got about 3 or 4 responses already from Wisconsin poets. So I'm well on my way to having a huge list of poets. It's an unending list, and thank you for being.
Yes, I know. Yeah, because I also in my column I published other poets. Sometimes I encourage the community to send in their poems. So sometimes there's a backlog, and sometimes yeah. So
Well,
I understand.
well, keep on doing the great work out there in Santa Barbara, California, and we really appreciate all the great creative inspiration that you provide from this coastal city. And I understand it's known for its Mediterranean climate. Is it known as the American Riviera? I've heard people say that.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's
It is.
awesome.
If you go to some place like Spain or or Italy, and a place where there's a town nestled between the ocean and mountains, it's very similar atmosphere and vibe. Yeah.
I will have to get out there sometime. Thanks again for being our guest, Melinda Palacio, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Melinda. There she goes, and we will put up some links here too to let our folks know about all the great work she's doing, especially her website, which includes a lot of the great stuff. So that's another edition of Poets Have Something to Say. I'm Jeff McAndrew, Poet Laureate from North Fond du Lac, signing off for today.